Good evening and welcome to the Hawaii Theater Center. I'm Dave Moss, Executive Director of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra. Thank you for joining us tonight for Tuning Up with Iggy and Dave. I am beyond excited for this evening's conversation. Iggy, can you bring us in this evening?
We have a lot of things going on. You can see from our table here. There are only 4 of us, but I think there are about 15 glasses, seems like on our coffee table, and about 4 or 5 wine bottles. We're so happy and honored to welcome 2 esteemed and eminent artists, colleagues of mine at the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra. We have Claire Butin, flute player, and so it's been a while since I saw you live in person, in flesh.
Since March, I think.
Since March. Nice to see you. And of course, Mark Butin, principal viola player, who's you all saw on stage performing with the group. I believe, Claire, you have not met our executive director, Dave Moss, either in person?
So, Dave, we met over FaceTime.
Yes, we FaceTime.
A few months ago.
Yeah.
But we have not actually met in person until today. So it's really lovely to see you in person.
Well, I'm so glad you're here, and I appreciate the warm welcome through FaceTime all those months ago. I thought we'd be back on stage with everyone by
We
now.
thought that too.
Yeah.
We thought that too.
For what it's worth.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yes. But I think, I'm really proud of the way the organization has come together and really proud of the 2 performances the last 2 weeks. And I think the 2 of you are maybe the only ones who have performed in every performance we've done so far.
I feel very privileged to have been part of each concert so far. I'm sure, Mark, you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I thought it was the kind of innovation of the space, and certainly the support of Hawaii Theater has been huge. Dave, I mean, the fact that you're able to kind of pivot and do what's necessary in this time, that's also great. And actually for Iggy too, just to be, and it's not an easy thing to, okay, we're going to do this, and by the way, I'm taking on all these responsibilities of collaborating, the rehearsal. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, it's done, but it's not done for orchestra on a regular basis. But I mean, there's a lot for you to take on, and very successful. I mean, I thought you did a great job.
Well, thank you, but we're all professionals. This is what we do for a living, and we feel very passionate about it. And professionals can learn to adapt quickly.
Absolutely.
And adjust on a dime. But we do it for ourselves because this is our craft, but ultimately we do it for the audience, for everyone who supports us, for the community, and that's what brings us a worthwhile sentiment.
I totally agree. Yeah, kind of reinventing it as we have had to do, and finding the challenges of it, but also the kind of the blessings of it too. There's been, we've never used technology this much in the time period that we have, but we found kind of new ways to do that safely, collaboratively, with our colleagues, kind of moving things around. I actually really have enjoyed it. It's been fun to be back playing, and it's been a little bummer not playing with Claire, but
I know. I wish that I had been able to play these concerts as a wind player. It's really sad to not be included right now, but I am optimistic for the future. And it's been really fun watching at home. We've been watching at home with our daughters, and so we've been putting it on our Surface Pro on the living room table and saying, like, guys, Daddy's gonna be on TV, let's watch it. And so it's been really fun, and I've been enjoying hearing the beautiful music coming from my colleagues.
So we had a lot of guests, but this is actually the first time, Dave, that we have 2 guests who are married to each other but have families. You have 3 daughters, I believe?
Yep, 3.
And, I have to ask you, since March, how have you had to adjust to this pandemic? Because it's one thing when you live by yourself at home, but when you have not 1, not 2, but 3 kids to take care of.
Well, it was a challenge, I would say, definitely at the beginning of the whole crisis. We were doing working from home, teaching from home, essentially homeschooling from home, and it was difficult. It wasn't super easy, but I felt like we weathered that storm really well, and we are really grateful that we are going to school in person right now. Our children go to a wonderful school, Trinity Christian School, on the windward side of this island, and it's been great. It's been really great.
Claire, I have to ask you a question. I read an article in the New York Times, I think, a few months ago, and they said that in a household, 50% of the fathers said that they helped a lot more at home, and 1% of the mothers agree with that.
That's a tough question, but Mark is really helpful around the house. Always has been, always will be. And it's great that, he's been working from home recently too. And so we've been spending a lot of time together.
Yeah, well, I was able to work at my office, my day job office, for 4 months.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, but it was crazy to be, okay, now you got to leave that and go home. And I just thought, the problem is that when it's always available, you never know when to stop, because you think, okay, I'm going to just finish this. And, we're very dedicated to our family, but also trying to do our jobs well. And that is a challenge. I think to having that always available to you and trying to balance everything. I mean, we're in a great team. There's really an excellent balance to what we do. And we have different strengths that we kind of blend together. So sometimes when we have to deal with each one of our children in different ways, or, possibly just everyday life that goes on, we have to find an appropriate balance.
Well, it's one of the silver linings of this whole pandemic is that we are able to spend more family time together. I mean, for instance, earlier today, we were just taking a hike together, and we went and we did the Loop Trail,
Yep.
Right? That's what it's called, Loop Trail. It was the first time that we ever did that, and our daughters actually did really great. Even our 4-year-old.
I'm not blowing up my job.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on leave now, but it's also nice to just do that as a family and spend more time together.
Yep.
Just kind of get up and doing stuff, but we trade things out a little bit, and our daughters are very involved, and they work hard. And part of it is assigning them chores to do, so we have a balance that we all kind of rotate around.
We enforce chores.
And we enforce that, and we enforce a positive attitude towards doing those chores as well.
Yes.
Because you gotta have a grateful heart, and as we work together with that, I think they understand, and we empower them in their roles, and they feel much more a part of the solution and the success too. So they also enjoy that. Finding the
Wonderful.
balance.
Well, this hike you went on, you weren't by chance celebrating anything, were you?
I love the way you put that. Yes. Well, actually, we were celebrating the fact that my wife has reached a new pinnacle birthday, and she's done it with grace and beauty.
Decade.
She's in a new decade. She's finally 30. No, but anyway.
Bless you for saying that. Yeah, thank you.
No, it's really nice. I actually intended to be off island for this time, and with this quarantine, we weren't able to do it. But it's helped us. It's another reinvention of what we have available to us now, and we live in a beautiful place, no matter which island you are on.
That is true.
And we just kind of reinvent it as we go, and it's been great.
Well, and you both have so many passions outside of music, mutual passions, some of which are on the table, which brings us to a very important a point in the program. Every week, this program is sponsored by Kaka'ako Wines. And this evening, I am going to mispronounce this, but it's 2017. I understand there's at least two people here who can properly pronounce this, but it's a Grand Moraine from Oregon, a Pinot Noir, which was the special this week. So if you're sipping along with us at home, we promise to get to that one, along with the others on the table here. But thank you to our sponsors at Kaka'ako Wines for continuing that relationship. And we didn't plan for a quiz question tonight, Iggy.
Yes, we did not. Correct.
We have some, though.
Oh, you have a quiz question? Oh,
Go for it.
Shall I do the one I
okay.
was thinking of? Okay, I have one. Okay, we'll see if anybody will get this. Okay.
Claire saves the day.
well prepared
saves the
guess.
day.
Yes.
It's a normal occurrence. She always saves the day.
Okay, Johann Sebastian Bach often at the ends of his manuscripts would put 3 letters. He would write SDG. What does it stand for?
And the number to text that answer to is right here on your screen. I'm getting better at this. This side. Thank you, Donald. 808-528-0506. Text us your answer. And there's a bottle of wine headed your way for the first person who answers correctly. And I don't remember what the answer to this is. So, and also, you're able to text us questions this evening about the HSO, about our guests, all of those things. And we're already getting a few questions here, which is what reminded me. Iggy, could you please reintroduce our guests?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tuning Up with Dave and Iggy. We are so happy tonight to welcome 2 eminent artists, colleagues of mine of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, Claire Butin, who's a flute player in the orchestra, and Mark Butin, principal viola player in the orchestra.
Thank you.
Did I miss something?
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
But it was very well done both times.
Beautifully, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk about music before we talk about wine.
Yes.
Just to make sure we get that in there this evening. You've been with the orchestra for how long, Claire?
Me? 16 years.
16 years. And Mark?
22, I think.
Wait. So I got to cut you off because I don't like to mix private life and professional life. However, I have to tell you that I came here a few years before Mark.
That's right.
Then Mark came and everything changed in Hawaii. No, but
What?
So Mark came by himself, right?
That's
and
right.
actually, you came with your brother,
Yes, my brother was here 1 year before me on a 1 year.
French
That's
horn
right.
player.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, Claire came.
2004.
And then I don't know what happened, but the next thing I know is Claire and Mark are getting married. So, is that what you wanted to ask, Dave?
You stole the words right out of my
Yes.
mouth.
So, should we talk about that, or should we talk about other things first?
We can talk about that. For Claire, it wasn't love at first sight, but she finally realized that, violists were decent people.
Sure, yeah.
No,
When I first joined the orchestra, I thought Mark was hazing me because we were playing in the pit orchestra and he was right in front of me and he would occasionally lean over and like whisper something to me and I thought, the conductor is talking. I'm not supposed to be saying anything. And so I would just kind of purposely not look at you and just make sure I was really focused on what I was supposed to be doing. And so for a long time you were calling me Ice Queen.
she was pretty chilly. But I will say this, because Claire and I both come from Texas, we're both from Houston, and that's unusual. I mean, we're here out here in Honolulu from Houston. It's not exactly close, so that was kind of nice, just to have another person from Texas, especially my hometown here.
Really?
Yeah. So that was kind of neat, but there's many more parallels that are kind of hard to enumerate them. But we grew up in Texas together. We both lived abroad for about 2 years during our kind of junior high, elementary school years, and we both went to school in the Midwest. We both studied music.
But we never knew each other. Until
our dads
we
are both
found each other
chemists,
here.
For different companies. This kind of bizarre parallels there, but in a lot of ways it kind of meant we kind of identify with a lot of things, specifically kind of spending those time abroad in those younger years, kind of what that experience was like, kind of dreading going and then not wanting to come back, and it's a great experience. And Claire kind of took it to the next level. She actually went back and studied in London, and during her junior year, right?
my junior year of college. I did spend 1 year in London, but earlier in my life, it was a couple of years in France, which is...
That's right. So actually, Claire, I was curious because we foreigners who grew up outside the U.S., we think of Texas, and we think of barbecue.
You think of Paris, Texas, right?
Wild expanse. That's right. I know there's a Paris, Texas because there was a movie by
There
Wim
is.
Wenders
That's
called
right.
Paris, Texas, with Harry Dean Stanton. Very good movie. The Cannes Palme d'Or. Anyway, so you don't think of people from Texas necessarily being sophisticated like the Europeans.
Well, we're proving you
Quote
wrong,
unquote.
right?
That's right. So what was it? Did you actually have Europeans in Europe kind of say, oh, you guys are from Texas, or you have cowboy boots and spurs and things like that?
They did ask us.
Or where you felt welcome over there?
You
or?
mean in Europe when we were
Yes,
there?
at first.
I went to an American school, and so I didn't really get a lot of that.
I didn't. It was a little weird for me.
Where did you go?
I went to St. Edmunds in Hindhead.
A boarding school?
A boarding school, but I didn't board. But we were there Monday through Saturday. So it was a 6-day-a-week
It
school.
was a little like Hogwarts.
It's exactly like Hogwarts.
But just that you didn't stay over.
That's
on
right,
the
but there was
whole-
not magic.
Yeah.
And
What team were you on?
Which house were you in?
I was in the Nelson house because they're all famous sailors. So, but anyway, and my brother was better at sports than me. Well, that's what happens. But anyway, it was actually a fascinating experience to show up and have, first of all, 6 days of school, but also we had divinity every day. We had Latin. We had a Latin background, then we had Latin language, and it was very enlightening with regard to kind of even history, to studying European history. We learned all about Roman history, learned about English history, and it was great. We had Mr. Caldwell, God bless him, what an unbelievable man. He would come and his lesson, and he would take colored chalk and draw the lesson on the chalkboard. And every teacher, and it was so beautifully done. Every teacher would come and they didn't want to erase it. So they were like using one little section of the chalkboard to do their lesson because it was such a masterpiece. And he would come in for the next class and just erase all. Everyone's like, oh, perish the thought. But some fantastic professors there. I learned a lot. We're just blessed to have the experience, and it was good.
And the viola and the flute, did that come from Texas or from Europe?
I actually wanted to play the violin when I was 4, and my mom didn't want me to do it. She thought,
Viola was or that came later.
that was later.
Okay.
Sadly. But what did you...
There was a lady at my church who played the flute when I was growing up, and I remember thinking, oh, it's really pretty, and so I enjoyed listening to that. So I always kind of had in the back of my mind that I liked the flute. And then in Paris, all of the children at the American School of Paris, we began band in the 4th grade. And so at the beginning of 4th grade, it was, okay, what instrument do you want to play, right? And a lot of my friends were playing the flute. And so I kind of thought maybe I wanted to play the clarinet because, my name is Claire, and that would be kind of neat to be Claire that played the clarinet.
Oh, no.
But then isn't this so sad? I kind of went in with the peer pressure of my friends, and I ended up playing the flute. And from the moment I remember opening the case, and just looking at the cases, it's like, well, I have a different color case now, but my first flute had this beautiful blue velvet, and I remember opening it up, and the flute's all beautiful silver, and I just remember thinking like, oh, this is so cool. And so from the first time I, really picked it up and started to actually play it, I thought, oh, this is way better than the clarinet. Don't tell my clarinet colleagues, sorry.
Hey, Norm.
But yeah. Norm's probably watching. Hi, Norm.
Hi, Norm.
I still love the clarinet, but the flute was just I just kind of fell in love from that day.
But neither of you have parents musicians?
My parents are musical, very musical. Hi, Mom and Dad, you're probably watching too. Yeah. And my parents are wonderful singers, and they still perform in the community chorus.
It's a great appreciation of music.
Yeah, Dave and Rita,
Yes.
they're very supportive, and they're very, they really make it a point to come to our concerts. They listen, and it's great.
My dad and I used to go on dates to see the Houston Symphony when I was in junior high. It would be like a daddy-daughter date, and let's go watch the symphony together. Sometimes we'd go, get an appetizer at a restaurant, and then we'd go watch the concert. And I just thought, this is the coolest thing ever. And so from a early age, I always liked the experience of going to a concert hall and experiencing, a live classical music performance.
I think, Iggy, I just remember you saying in the past, when you listen to music, how it just kind of moved you emotionally a lot. And I felt the same when I was younger. I think I remember weeping to Bread, remember the
Yes.
band Bread? I mean, I just said that, I said this at 4 years old, this is the most beautiful thing. That was guitar. But anyway, still string. But just thinking this is such a beautiful thing. It really moved me a lot. My dad was not too thrilled about the whole music thing. He just said, great, I'll have to support you the rest of my life, was his initial reaction. My mom, on the other hand, she played alto uke, and she played in a band called Two Dots in the Dash, because she was tall and her two friends were shorter. And that's what she did. I guess they played, bands, dances or something. But anyway, it was fascinating. She was very encouraging of the music part of it. But I didn't start the violin until I was in 6th grade. And I played violin for a couple of years. I really enjoyed it, but most of the friends, when I went to a performing arts high school in Houston, and most of my friends started when they were 4. It was just pretty competitive. They were excellent. I mean, here they're playing Vinyasa, they're playing Brahms, they're playing Tchaikovsky Concerto, and I'm thinking, this is not gonna happen. And my teacher at the time, Ken Goldsmith, was a professor at University of Houston, then went to Rice, recently passed away, actually.
Really?
Yes, I believe so. Said, hey, did you ever consider playing the viola? And I said, no. And, but he encouraged me to play the viola, and after being emotionally scarred initially for my not success at violin, I found that I actually really enjoyed it much more. And it's not that I didn't want to play the violin repertoire is so wonderful, but just kind of being involved, I did enjoy the harmony. I did enjoy the viola repertoire and kind of what I learned as being a musician. It just kind of rounded out things in a different way. And then he encouraged me to study with Peter, actually.
Yeah.
That's where that whole, Peter Slow, that's where the whole thing kind of came from. And I just found just a better fit. I hate to say that it wasn't a step down, it was just a better fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really enjoyed that.
And you reference Peter, Peter Slovic, who's actually a mutual connection for us. I studied with Peter when I was a violist at Oberlin, and we actually had a comment. I think this must refer to your time at Northwestern, because it says "Go Cats."
Yes.
And then also the same person asked if Mark explained why he decided to move to Hawaii.
That's interesting, because I spent, as soon as I left from my master's, I did a 1-year master's at Northwestern, and I was playing Civic at that time, and I went to New World Symphony afterwards. And I was in it, which was a fascinating and wonderful experience. I learned a lot at New World Symphony. I got to give Michael Tilson Thomas a huge shout out in a positive way. The environment and the just the opportunity to learn the orchestra repertoire. They were constantly trying to find ways to give us opportunities to learn and practice auditions and just play professionally. But I'll never forget this. I went to Michael and said, it's the end of my time. Would you consider giving me another year here? And he said, no. And I said, but I need to be in an environment where someone will kick me in the ocole, use a different word. And he said, kick yourself there. He said, you know everything you need to know. He said, you have the killer instinct. You need to apply yourself. And at first I was really hurt by that. And I thought, because there are some other people who did stay 4 years. But I never practiced like I did after that. And I did find a focus. That wasn't everything perfect, but there was certainly a better return on my investment for my practice. And when I first came to Hawaii, I was just shocked. I'd never been here before. This was a fascinating place to show up. And I was terrified. first of all, stepping into this role because Zhao Yu at that time was the principal, and he took a year of leave. So I won the assistant principal job. I played principal, and then they asked me to play principal for a second year. And so I played principal for 2 years, and then I re-auditioned for principal after that time. So it was a lot for me to kind of be there to do that. But I have to admit, what I learned in that environment has served me tenfold in my life about making some bad decisions, or not communicating effectively, or not being a good leader, or not compromising, or not.
Compromise. Never heard of that word.
But I have to say, and there's times where you have to learn that, and never a better place in an orchestra where the results are immediate.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, you pay the price right there. And I have to admit, I'll never forget getting a bow for Tristan and Isolde. I had to bow the whole. I had no idea what to do. I mean, well, at least the prelude and the libus are bowed. The rest of it, I don't, and I didn't bow it. And I showed up at rehearsal, and my colleagues were ready to.
And the opera was, what, 3 or 4 hours long?
Yeah, and so I'll never forget. I mean, my section members that came up, they said, "What the heck are you doing?" And I just remember staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning, bowing it, go down to Kinko's, copying it for them per act. And I just thought, there's something I learned about being a leader, being an effective communicator, being patient with myself, being patient with others, that I would never have learned not in this position.
Yeah. I want to touch on New World Symphony, because I think it's, for our audience, they might not be familiar what that is. And I think it's something that's very unique to our industry. Although I think that there's a correlation to baseball. I've always described New World as kind of being the AAA minor league baseball team that's preparing you to go up to the majors. And it is not your typical conservatory type route, but you are active in an orchestra, but learning all of those leadership skills and those section skills and the audition process and all of those sorts of things that Michael Tilson Thomas, who has run that for so many years, and they've just been on the forefront of what we're going through now, the media side of things, and creating a career for yourself as musicians. And there's so much more. You talk about the leadership aspect. There's so much more that goes into being a section player or just an orchestra player outside of showing up, playing all the right notes at the right time, and then going home. There is so much time and energy into so many things beyond that.
I totally agree.
It's great to hear what our audience into that side of things for. We have a few questions that I want to take before we get too far ahead here. Someone has said that since the panel is 50% viola players, it must be rigged. But that was followed up with a question. It seems that there are several viola students watching, and a question from a patron as well. Could you talk about the viola? What is the difference between a violin and viola? And my favorite question, why was it created?
Interesting. Why was it created? Well, it's been around for a long time, from my understanding.
Longer than the violin, I would say.
Longer than the violin. The difference really is that the violin truly has a range and a kind of in terms of the involvement of string instruments. There's not much match to the violin. It's a fantastic instrument. It's acoustically balanced with its size too, and it's mathematically correct. The viola, on the other hand, has some challenges because of the ergonomics of the viola. Probably one of the most fascinating things, at least for me, is to see that video where Yo-Yo Ma plays the yo-yola.
Yeah.
Where it's actually the correct size for its dimension, anyway, its sound, with the end pin on it. And truly, I mean, it is a beautiful sound. And really, the artistry in making a viola correctly is extremely difficult for those creating the instruments, because you have that challenge of trying to balance the ergonomics. And there's all these crazy, Rita Porphyris and Houston Symphony has that real interesting viola that's made. So trying to balance the acoustic limitations of the viola with also its role in the orchestra. Because if you really think about it, if we have soprano, alto, tenor, bass, we're kind of in the middle because the cellos can take that tenor part beautifully and with a much more balanced acoustic instrument.
You're the alto line.
And we kind of are the alto line, but the second violins are also there too. So we have this kind of unique collaboration with our second violin colleagues to kind of blend that together to make it a real rich sound.
Yeah.
But the viola in and of itself doesn't have the repertoire for it because like the cello and the violin do, but truly makes the orchestra, as a tool in the orchestra, is unique to itself. I mean, when the viola has a line or is given that type of supporting role or whatever that it is, you can't replace it with anything else. And we share that with our clarinet colleagues and our horn colleagues. That's the range right there. And our clarinetists and our horn colleagues know we don't have the bragging rights of the French horn. but nonetheless, we support them a lot, especially in Brahms and
You add a lot of texture.
We add a lot of texture.
You know, especially, things like stuff like that is happening when other melodic lines are happening. If it were only those melodic lines, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting because you've got this extra
The color
texture.
too is different. In terms of being around for a long time, it has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I for one, and it's interesting you bring that up, or the question is, I'm listening to Pergolesi Stabat Mater a lot,
Yeah.
and I love that genre. I actually like period instrument recordings a lot, and there's just something about it that kind of takes me back to the early days of string instruments, and that juxtaposition of that dissonance in the resolutions with those recordings where it's tuned down a lot. I did basically a masterclass with the Youth Symphony. I was talking about Brandenburg, and I said I played a recording for them that was tuned down, and I said you can't practice with this one because
don't practice along with that one.
But I said listen to the artistry of these people. I mean, it's just so beautifully done, and I really like that. There's a time and a place for it. I mean, there's people who either love it or hate it, but I, for one, really like it because of the history of kind of the instrument, its evolution from way back in Baroque times to where it is today, and some of the innovations that have done to kind of give it more ability to project, a better acoustical balance, and even giving it more of a highlight like Hindemith did, obviously, and the other composers. So,
But imagine a string quartet without a viola. There wouldn't be a string quartet. And it's the same thing in an orchestra.
That's right, yeah.
Imagine an orchestra without the viola section, there would be no orchestra. But Claire, I wanted to ask you, maybe the balance of 50% viola players and the rest being flute and violin, maybe it's, they always think of violinists and flute players as being very high-strung. And so maybe Dave and Mark are here to provide some soothing balance.
Are we high-strung?
Claire, I wanted to ask you, because the stereotype, the violins are always so hyper and, intense and type A personalities. And the flute players, we always think of them as being sort of prima donnas.
It's a
So can you
stereotype of flutists.
tell us the truth, please?
About violinists.
tell us the truth, please.
You know what? I think that's a little unfair. I know lots of flute players, and I know a lot of flute players who are not very prima donna-ish.
But I mean, you still have to have a voice of your own, an opinion, right?
Well, especially when you are playing principal flute in the orchestra, you do have to take on a leadership role. You do have to kind of say, this is my melody and I'm going to lay this one down. But you also have to know when to listen to your other colleagues. You have to know when, okay, this is my solo, this is not my solo. You shouldn't play everything like it's your solo, right? And so that's part of the skill of being an orchestral musician, is that you are not always the soloist. You have to know exactly who you should be listening to and when, and to try to blend your sound into their sound the best that you can.
Now, can I ask you a technical question about tuning? Because after show, this show is called Tuning Up. But for string players, you just tune to 440 and you just draw the bow against the string, and then there's a vibration. but the tuning on the viola, and not on the viola, on the flute, because I've always been wondering when you play a wind instrument, the bassoon, the oboe, the clarinet, the flute, the tuning is doesn't always match, and sometimes when I was in youth orchestras at summer camps, the bassoon would tend to be kind of sharp. And the flute would sometimes be a little bit flat.
Maybe those are your performers. Generally speaking, we listen to the A that is provided by the oboe, right? And then we adjust our instrument accordingly. And generally, like for most flute players, I can't necessarily speak for all woodwind players, but there's kind of like a little sweet spot in terms of, like for flute players, how far you're going to pull out your head joint or how much you're going to push it in. And you kind of memorize, like, okay, that little line right there, that is usually perfect tuning. And then you try that one, and if it's not perfect tuning, then you adjust slightly when the oboe plays the tuning note. And then based on that, you're always listening and adjusting every single note to try to find your perfect intonation. And of course, it's going to be different depending on, let's say you're playing a C major chord. Do I have the third? Do I have the fifth? Do I have the tonic? And depending on that, you may have to make slight adjustments too. So it's a lot of using your ear and adjusting all the time.
But I think one aspect which is interesting is when you play a string instrument, you listen with your ears. But when you play wind instruments, you always do that, and if you're a singer also. But I think there's somewhere in the transition between how you produce the sound and using your ears to listen to how you tune is not always literal. It's sometimes. At least for me, sometimes I play. I think I'm in tune, and then I listen again to recording, and it's not what I thought it was.
I feel the same thing.
There may be a slight. Maybe the woodwinds we're listening to ourselves, and it's harder to hear you necessarily. Maybe it's across the orchestra.
But I totally agree, because there's times where I think I'm playing in tune, and I listen back and think, this isn't working. Especially when we play mixed chamber music, makes a huge difference than when we're playing with strings. Because when we're blending with strings, the timbre, it's easier. I think you can say, okay, I'm sharp and flat. It's kind of like you don't have to tell me I'm off. I know I'm off, but sometimes when I'm playing with the woodwind, I really think it is okay, and then I listen later and think, what the heck happened? But
I think part of it might be vibrato.
That part, I agree. I think it is.
Somewhere in the vibrato, you got to play in tune.
Depends how stable it really is.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Or how fast it is.
If you're having a vibrato that's like always on the top edge of the pitch, and is not perfectly going sort of above and below, then you will sort of naturally sound sharper.
I also, it's amazing talking with my brother about this.
The French horn player. Right?
Yeah, French horn, because he would have this 10 cents sharp, 10, 30 cents, and I thought, what the heck are you talking about? But as they tune, they are thinking, it's so different as a section. They're thinking about a triad with their group, and I'm not thinking about a triad because we're playing the same parts.
Yeah.
And so they have this real interesting kind of, okay, what scale degree are you and what you're going to do? And they think of it in a completely different way, at least than we do.
Well, and you may think of it differently depending on the piece of music and where in that particular piece of music.
That's true, that's true.
Right? Like, let's say you're doing something that's more of a chorale, you're going to think of it differently than if you have a giant solo to play where no one else is accompanying you, or very little accompaniment is under you, right? So I do think of it differently depending on what I am playing.
We are getting. We've never had so many questions, actually. So you've brought the questions out tonight. Actually, I want a sip of that before this question. Has Mark ever played or tried to play the flute, and has Claire ever played or tried to play the viola? If so, does that help or hinder the marriage?
Oh wow, what a question! You know what? I don't think I've ever tried to play your viola.
Yeah.
I tried. Did I once?
It's painful.
I tried to play your violin. He has a violin from many years ago that I tried to play. I can play like a Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the violin, not well, but no, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
I wasn't that great. My daughter, my oldest daughter, Chloe, tried to play. She played the flute for a while, and Ashley and Chloe both play piano now. But I mean,
You've made a sound on the flute before.
You even said it was okay sound. We wouldn't say quality. I'm not talking about, nice Bordeaux. We're talking about it's adequate. Smile, wink, don't play anymore, that type of thing. But it certainly doesn't affect our marriage at all, because we have many more things to worry about than whether we can play each other's instrument.
A question to go along with that: what tips do you have for getting children involved in music? Both professional musicians.
That would be definitely. Well, I mean, both of us, but you're the expert here, so you deal with it every day.
Oh my! Well, I mean. For us, it's just a part of every day.
Every day. Mm-hmm.
Almost every hour of the day.
That's true.
There's music involved in some way. I mean, from when we were sitting down at the breakfast table, we were singing Grace together, and then at school, our children are often singing throughout their entire school day, not just in music class with me, but just throughout the whole entire school day.
Well, tell them about the chants and things they learn.
They do. They're doing something called classical education, and so a lot of the things that they do, let's say that they're going to learn about the Mediterranean Sea. They learn a little song that goes like, the Mediterranean Sea, fact. And then they recite these facts, and then they sing the whole, they learn more facts than I know about the Mediterranean Sea, but they can just rattle them right off.
But it's through a song. And my oldest daughter, she does her mathematics by chanting.
She does skip counting with a song. We'll say like, okay, Chloe, do your sevens times tables, and she'll
singing in her head.
She'll sing in her head the skip counting song for
14,
sevens.
21,
and she'll just
27. Yeah, she actually puts it in her head. She's singing it in her head as she's able to do it, which is fascinating. But we also had, I got a shout out for Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger, he knows what he's talking about. Because whenever they had a lesson...
I think some people don't know who Daniel Tiger is.
Daniel Tiger.
He's like the modern Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
But he's an animated tiger.
But they sing lessons. So what was the cleanup song?
He's like, I don't know.
No, what was the cleanup song that we... gosh, it's been a long time, so we had to sing that one, but...
I can't remember the cleanup song. Well, there's lots of different cleanup songs I know, but...
one Daniel Tiger song.
The one that we used to always do was when they were leaving a place.
That's right.
We'd sing to them, like, choose one more... Oh, it's almost time to stop, so choose one more thing to do. And then they'd have to sing back to us, I'll play one more minute, then I'll come along with you. And that was just like... We used to sing that to them at the playground. And even their little neighbor friends, they'd say like, oh, your mom's singing the song. Time for you to go.
But it became something that we did like all the time. And then I'd do the drop the needle at the table. We'd say, I just had the phone hooked up to the Alexa, and I drop, what's the composer?
We play Name the Composer a lot.
But also we've gone through as early as early Baroque music to even modern Christian rock and roll. I mean, my daughters know I can drop 80s music and they know what it is. We were at a fair once, and they were playing Toto by Africa by Toto. And Chloe goes, hey, it's Toto, it's Africa. And this guy was like, what the heck? This is 7-year-old.
How do you know that? Yeah.
It was awesome.
But we listen to music all the time, all different types of music.
Lots of different genres.
Throughout the whole entire day.
So Dave, speaking of composers, do we have a winner yet?
We do have a winner. Sorry, I have to go back in the messages here. Well, first of all, what is the correct answer?
So the correct answer, I can say it now.
You can. I've often forgot to give people the correct answer, so it's important, I've learned, to tell people.
So the correct answer is Soli Deo Gloria, which is the Latin for To God Be the Glory.
And our winner was Thomas Swan. Congratulations.
Good job, Thomas.
Yeah, we have a bottle of wine headed your way this week from Kaka'ako Wines.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a great trivia, Claire.
That was an excellent.
Very good, yes.
So we know that you are a true wine aficionado.
No.
Sorry, I don't know how to say that word in English. But
Aficionado.
before we get to that, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Two momentous moments in your life after you joined the orchestra. One, of course, was Claire, but the other one was your passion into flying.
That's true.
Can you tell us a little bit about it and where that has led you?
Well, I never thought it would turn out this. I was given an intro flight for my birthday in 2000. And I took a flight, and I'd been doing Microsoft Flight Simulator since I was 16 with my 6-inch floppies and my old computers with my, just for fun. And I went flying, and the guy said, well, you seem to have an aptitude to this, you want to do it? And I said, okay. So I landed, gave him my $100, got my starter kit, I started reading, and just started flying. And it was super fun. What a beautiful place to learn to fly too. I went through a couple different instructors, and big shout out to Mark Jones, who was kind of not the person who started me, but who I studied to do my private pilot check ride with, single engine. And after that, I went through every rating there was. I became an instructor, and in 2003, I did both multi-engine, single engine instructing, and it's just such a fun thing to do. It was hard to balance that because I had my viola students and now my flight students. So I was, whenever I wasn't in the orchestra, I was teaching both disciplines. And then in 2004, George's Aviation had a inter-island kind of charter company. And so I would finish concerts, and I didn't have the time. It was a single pilot charter situation at that point in the Navajo. And so I used to fly around to deliver papers to the outer islands at night after the concert. So I'd leave the concert, change, I'd leave my tux in the car, and I would get in, and I'd fly all night till 4 a.m. delivering papers to the outer islands. And I could only fly.
You did it.
I could only fly
really close.
I could only fly the legs that were not revenue at that point until they became a multi-pilot operation. And at that point, I flew with a bunch of furloughed Hawaiian pilots at that time. So I got to know them. I learned a lot from them. They all went back to Hawaiian Airlines. I took over flying as captain then and became a check pilot, which means checks other pilots. And it was just an unbelievable fun thing to do. I learned a ton about it. And the beauty of it is the artistry and the balance that we have to learn in music translates so beautifully to the airplane. The airplane is just almost insultingly simple at times compared to like trying to figure out what to do with my viola. And I don't say that it doesn't take discipline and skill to do it, but the parameters are not quite as varied. Weather is our biggest thing in aviation that changes. But I feel incredibly blessed by the people that have spent time teaching me, the opportunity to teach others, and the life that it's taken me to. I have to admit the FAA kind of took me on before the symphony went down in 2009. I had zero interest in becoming a federal ASI or aviation safety inspector. And then my principal operations inspector at the time said, "Did you ever think about working for the FAA?" I said, "No, not really." And then when the symphony started to be on rocky ground back then, I said, "Hey, what was that you were talking about?" And I joined the FAA in October of 2009, and by December, our symphony, the thing that was my life, kind of went under, and we're just shocked. I mean, I have to say, it was divine intervention by the act of God that even would have happened. The opportunity came up, and it was hard.
We were so grateful too, because that was right before our first daughter was born.
Yeah, right before our daughter was born. And it was very bittersweet. I mean, I learned a ton. I've just been so blessed to work in federal service, learning a ton, being on the other side, just ensuring aviation safety is basically what my job is. I work with a fantastic company now. They're wonderful people there. It's Rhodes Aviation, but they're also known as Transair. They're doing business as Transair, and I basically oversee their operation for safety. I work with some fantastic people. I'm blessed to work collaboratively with the airline to achieve their greatest goals, both their business goals, which I don't have an issue. I can't really change that, but I work on their safety part of it. But they're such a great group of people. They work really hard, and it's just a great place to be there. But at the end, they're like, "Hey, you playing a concert tonight?" Yeah. And the owner of Transair, he literally is just chomping at the bit to know when our next concert is. He's just so excited about this. And it's just a really cool collaboration to mix those two things. And it has been a fantastic thing. And also many, many colleagues at Hawaiian Airlines who have supported us through the Pops over many years, who've come to our concerts. I see them in our audiences when we were playing our live concerts. It's a great thing. because that collaboration, they come backstage and are like, wow, this is so neat. Many wonderful airmen out there flying that keep all of you as you travel safe.
Yeah.
And to work collaboratively with them in that regard, and also them coming and supporting us, it's a wonderful relationship.
And I understand that you have actually served as captain for the orchestra on occasion as well. Maybe some educational outreach programs to other islands.
Well, the opportunity comes, I mean, those are collaborations. Under the regulation, you can't be compensated for them, but you can share expenses. So when it came up to do things with Galliard that we did in the past, it was just nice because we didn't have to deal with any schedules, just jump in the plane and go. And we did things with Maui Symphony, which is another thing that was another kind of outreach where our resources, we could help keep the music going on the other islands.
Yeah.
It was really great. I feel so fortunate to have blended those things together, and to be able to support both the aviation industry and the music industry. It's really a
Iggy,
blessing.
did you ever fly with Mark?
I did. Mark flew, and I didn't throw up, so that was good. But what I wanted to say was that when the last few years, seeing that Mark was getting so busy with the FAA,
That's true, yeah.
I've always been very impressed because you've been always very committed to the orchestra and never missed a rehearsal, and just your full commitment to the orchestra and to the music, in addition to the to your flying occupation. So your musical dedication never took a backseat. In fact, I remember, we're talking about parallels, and there's something very analytical about music, but sometimes it's also very much, there's a lot of freedom of expression. And I remember sometimes when Mark would ask the conductor questions, and I would just go like this, because I knew I was going to get very, very, very precise, and it was going to be like a checklist before flying.
Mark is good with detail.
What kind of bowing? What are you showing? How is your beat? Are you in 3/4 or 4/4? Can you show us you uptake or
What's your
downbeat?
pre-flight plan here?
Yes. And it would the conversation would kind of go on for a few minutes, and the more he would talk, and more like that, and then finally we would be done and would be ready to resume the music. But anyway, I mean, and it tells you need all kinds of people in an orchestra.
Well, I have to admit, and I want to also say, part of that is that those kind of questions are because my colleagues, my viola colleagues, they really want to know.
Yeah.
And they pass it up, and I usually have to kind of temper that and say, look, I get it, but there's a certain time I can do this or not. But I mean, they really are seeking collaboration, and it's so challenging. And I know they understand this at this point. And I have to give a shout out to Steve Flanter, who's been my stand partner for 22 years. And Steve and I have been through so many things, but I appreciate everyone in my section because we have been together for 22 years. Mel took a leave this year, but it's been the same group of people for that amount of time. And I'll never forget, we auditioned for some per-service members, and they were outside of our group, and the section's like, wait, who are these people? But it was just fascinating because we really are a tight-knit group, and I've learned a tremendous amount from them. I can't even enumerate the questions that they have, or they're such different people, but they also can collaborate together. And
I think every section in the orchestra is like that.
Well, it is, but I can only speak.
That's what makes it so interesting.
It
that
is.
We've got so many different personalities in our orchestra, and
We do,
I mean, it's just kind of amazing.
But I do appreciate the detail, and when they, I know that if I say this is what it is, but I don't ask, they're going to say, "Well, are you sure?" and there's an accountability built into that, but it's a good thing, and I appreciate their diligence, and they will keep me accountable. So I gotta ask. I know at times it's difficult because we have a limited amount of time, and I get it.
Well, we've gone nearly 54 minutes here without talking about wine.
True.
Which is another passion of yours,
It
as we
is.
touched on earlier, and is where does this come from? Where does this?
Do you know, I was sitting in Palomino restaurant over here, which doesn't exist
doesn't
anymore.
exist anymore.
But it was a lovely place.
It was good.
And I was drinking Saint-Cyprien Sauvignon Blanc from California. And I thought, this is the most delicious thing. And it was hot, and it was just so good. And I thought, I just don't know. I mean, I look at the menu, and I say, I don't know, is this a good price? Is this a good wine? I don't know. There's all these colors. There's all these labels. So how do you discern? Is that good or not? Am I getting ripped off, or am I getting something for my value?
There's
is this
an artistry to
and so,
it,
and so I thought, what a great opportunity.
Craft.
So, basically, I just started reading crazy amounts of literature on wine. And then, having my
Like
lovely...
the wine labels on the bottles?
Well,
Yeah, you remember, right?
Yeah, well, exactly.
From our wedding, we had every table had a different wine label.
Yeah, for our wedding, we had Mouton Rothschild labels, because they're all done by different artists each year.
Yeah.
And so we had significant years in our lives on each table.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we had a trivia was, what are all these years? And then you win a bottle.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, we gave away a bottle of Mouton Rothschild. I think
We
it was...
did. Here, the funny thing is
93.
Jonathan Parrish won.
Jonathan Parrish won, and we knew won that.
Yeah.
But I think we had a crossword puzzle. Our friend Will Hall made a crossword puzzle of all ours. Anyway, we got into the wine.
Well, and we had taken a class together. It
Okay,
was
so
one of the
because you
things-
have to develop your nose, right?
It's not only that, it's so complicated. I mean, I have to give a shout out to Patrick Okubo, who is our very good friend who worked at Formaggio in Market City when we first were dating, and we'd see him there. Another musician, clarinetist, wonderful friend. Becky and Patrick are great friends, and we haven't seen him in a long time, but he is very patient with us. He's a master sound. There's several on the island, Chuck and Roberto and Patrick. But anyway, they were very patient with us, but then also I got really interested in it. And it was just something we did for fun, and it got kind of out of control. And we didn't have kids. It was like, whatever, let's just try some more wine. And now we have to be a little more diligent about what we do. But it's just this is such a beautiful collaboration between God and nature.
Is that mine?
Yeah.
Because the farmers and the vintners and the nature that these come from, the terroir, it is history in a bottle. And we opened the 95 Bordeaux for Claire last night for her birthday, and it's just amazing. This thing is, and as you let it do its thing when you open it up and all the layers come out, it just adds a quality of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a specialness, a celebration. It adds a dimension to your meals, and it's not something to be consumed quickly. It's something to enjoy.
To savor.
It's artistic.
Yeah.
And so what do you smell right now?
Wow.
You need to pour me a glass.
You have this one. So we're drinking, this one right here is a Le Petit Lion. So it's a second wine of Les Valascas, of the three Léavilles, Left Bank Bordeaux. It is from Saint-Julien. It has Cabernet Sauvignon, it's got Merlot. It's a mixture of the Bordeaux grapes.
Dave, what can you tell us?
It's very good wine. It's very good. I approve. A special shout out to our friends at Kaka'ako Wines. They can get all of this for you, I assume. So, but yes, it's really wonderful to, Iggy and I oftentimes talk about this, but this sort of oasis that we found here on Tuesdays, where there's this little bit of normalcy, and it's normal to us because we get to involve our patrons and our supporters and our whole ohana in these conversations, and we can't wait until you're able to taste this wonderful wine with us in person.
Indeed.
And just want to echo our gratitude that you continue to join us for these. have had 2 wonderful weeks of performances these last 2 weeks through our Sounds of Resilience programming. If you weren't tuned in on Saturday, we did announce that we're going to add a few more of these performances. And just this past Saturday, we had our very first woodwind player.
Yay!
So there's hope, Claire. There's hope.
I was very excited to see that.
Yeah, and so we are figuring out the safest way possible to bring our musicians back together, and eventually our audience as well. So at the end of October, we'll be doing another performance on Halloween on October 31st, entitled "Sweet Psycho Suite." That will have some Halloween type programming. It'll also have Herman's score from the movie Psycho. And then in November, we're going to do a performance of a program around songs of comfort and going home. It'll be the Saturday before Thanksgiving. So I know many of us won't be able to likely travel home for the holidays, given the current situation. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for that. And then in December, we are doing Iggy's Christmas Spectacular.
Awesome.
That's not what we decided to go with? No, okay. Sounds of the Season, I believe, is what we ended up with. Yes, but Iggy will be taking the helm on that again, and we'll be joined by a French horn soloist, Anna
Lenhard,
who joined us a few weeks ago.
Nice.
So, and some woodwinds on that performance as well. So we've gone over our hour, and I just again thank you to you both for joining us
to be
tonight.
Here. Thank you for having us.
Iggy,
thanks for
thank
having
you
us.
as always.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks
Thank you,
to
Claire.
Gregory Dunn here at the Hawaii Theater Center. Donald Sonoda, Vado 8 Video Productions, Bob Dickerson, our audio guy, and Spencer on lights, joining us for the show this evening. So thank you, Spencer. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks again.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Hi, everybody.